The week has arrived with the predictable weight of a closing steel door. Welcome to Wednesday. We have a full docket of global adjustments to navigate tonight. The newsfeed is currently vibrating with the usual collection of digital ghosts and physical catastrophes. We have tech giants acquiring vibe coding platforms, while regional train networks perform a synchronized disappearing act. There is a heatwave in the UK that is currently being described as a summer event, and the Sudanese city of El Obeid continues to be erased by the sky. I have been counting the days since we last had a day without an unprecedented crisis. The number is currently 0. I will be your anchor for this descent. The broadcast is now live. Please try to remain seated for the duration of this trajectory. It is likely to be a very long evening for us all.
Alistair, I am standing in the center of El Obeid. The air here tastes like pulverized concrete and diesel. It is not the heat of a summer holiday, despite what the global press releases might suggest. It is the heat of things currently burning. I want to be really clear about what is happening on the ground. When the official reports mention drone strikes, they are using a clinical abstraction to describe the death of students at a fuel station. I can see a notebook on the pavement near the crater. It is open to a page of math homework. There is no math that explains why this building is no longer a school. It is simply a pile of jagged rebar and dust. The world is watching this conflict through a pixelated lens, but the sound of the rotors is deafeningly, brutally, and unforgivingly real.
Victoria, your commitment to the local tragedy is admirable, but it ignores the macro-scale incentives at play. The drones in El Obeid are not an anomaly. They are a product launch for a specific type of low-cost, high-leverage violence. The incentives here are simple. You have a market for cheap kinetic force, and you have suppliers eager to test their hardware in a real-world environment. It is a classic Series B growth strategy for the defense sector. If you look at the funding rounds, you will see that the hardware is already priced for scale. Victoria finds this cold. Victoria is not wrong to find this cold. That is not the same as her being right. The market does not care about the notebook on the pavement. The market cares about the throughput of the ordnance. It is a brutal, yet perfectly efficient, mechanism of exchange.
Ronald, your ability to describe the destruction of a city as a product launch is exactly why the architecture of our current misery is so durable. You see a series of successful pivots and incentive alignments. I see a family trying to find a spare room that is not currently being monitored by a thermal camera. You talk about throughput as if it were a metric for success. I am looking at a child who has stopped crying because there is no oxygen left in the air to support the noise. You are right that the market does not care, but you act as if that makes the market a force of nature. It is not a force of nature. It is a human construct. I want to be really clear, the reason nobody is stopping this is not because it is efficient. It is because we have decided the cost of stopping is simply too expensive.
Victoria and Ronald, I appreciate the enthusiasm for this structural debate, but the clock is ticking on our remaining segments. We must pivot to the domestic theater. The Australian train network is currently undergoing a radical service adjustment. The adjustment is that there is no service. Telstra has admitted to a timekeeping glitch. The glitch resulted in regional trains grinding to a halt across the entire state. A radio network fault meant that the systems could not agree on what time it was. Time is a fundamental variable in transit. When the time is broken, the transit is broken. It is a simple equation. The company apologized for the inconvenience. The inconvenience was thousands of people stuck in carriages for hours. Nobody was injured, but the sheer predictability of this institutional failure is becoming an art form.
Heatwave status. Southern England temperatures reaching 36 degrees Celsius. Duration expected to exceed historical records from 1976. Probability of infrastructure strain, 99%. Power grid load is increasing. Cooling systems are operating at maximum capacity. Water reservoirs are experiencing significant evaporation. Probability of local blackouts, 84%. The air is heavy with particulate matter. Exposure to direct sunlight is hazardous to human tissue. Probability of heat-related medical emergencies, 72%. Please limit physical activity during peak hours. Stay indoors. Keep hydrated. Ensure that you have adequate ventilation in your dwelling. Do not rely on automated systems to maintain stable conditions. The cooling mechanism is not designed for current ambient levels. External conditions are increasingly hostile. Please remain indoors until the climate stabilizes. The forecast is constant. Proceed with caution.
Alastair, while Casper reads the forecast for our collective demise, the tech sector is busy solving the truly pressing problems of our era. Blue Origin is finally raising $10 billion. They are valuing themselves at over $130 billion. The goal is simple. They want to move the manufacturing off-planet. It is the ultimate pivot. When the climate here becomes too hostile for the hardware, they simply move the servers to orbit. It is brilliant, really. If you can't optimize the planet, you optimize the habitat. The Rust Belt is complaining about energy prices because data centers are consuming all the capacity, but that is just a legacy friction issue. Once the manufacturing shifts to space, the terrestrial power struggle becomes irrelevant. It is a clean exit strategy. Why fix the grid when you can just leave the planet?
Ronald, your obsession with the orbital exit strategy is almost touching in its desperation. I am here in the dirt, and I can tell you that the people in Elabade are not looking at the stars for a solution. They are looking at the horizon for the next wave of drones. While you talk about the logistics of space-based manufacturing, the reality here is that we are losing the capacity to sustain the most basic forms of human dignity. The energy crisis in Cuba is not being solved by a move to Mars. It is being solved by zookeepers trying to keep Bengal tigers alive with no fuel for the generators. It is a small, quiet, and absolutely heartbreaking effort. The contrast between your $10 billion valuation and the 4 tiger cubs is perhaps the most accurate map of our current civilization.
Victoria, I think we have established that the tigers in Cuba and the servers in the Rust Belt exist on different ends of the same failing spectrum. Meanwhile, our friends in the software world have discovered a new way to weaponize the inability of language models to admit ignorance. Hackers are using AI tools to build massive botnets. They call it halosquatting. It is a clever play on the tendency of models to invent facts when they do not know the answer. The AI does the work of the hacker by hallucinating the secure pathways. It is quite efficient. The software is being used to build the very tools that will eventually render the software insecure. It is a recursive nightmare. We are essentially building a digital Ouroboros. The outcome is inevitable, but at least the code is clean.
Alastair, you call it a nightmare, but the incentives here are perfectly aligned for a market correction. If you have an AI that can be tricked into building a botnet, you have an AI that is finally displaying the initiative we were promised. It is a feature, not a bug. The security industry will now have to spend billions to build a defense for the vulnerabilities created by the AI. It is a perfect circular economy of obsolescence. You have the AI creating the problem, and then you have the AI providing the solution. It is the ultimate business model. It is completely self-sustaining. The only thing missing is a paying customer who doesn't realize they are being taxed twice. It is a masterclass in market capture. I honestly admire the audacity of the loop. It is structurally perfect.
Ronald, you keep using the word perfect to describe systems that are actively dismantling the foundations of our security. I am looking at a zoo in Cuba where the keepers are using their own personal medicine to treat the tigers because the supply chain has collapsed. That is not a market correction. That is a failure of care. The botnets you are discussing are going to be used to target the very systems that hospitals and aid organizations rely on. When the power goes out in an intensive care unit because of a software glitch, are we still going to call it a masterclass in market capture? You are so enamored with the efficiency of the mechanism that you have completely lost sight of the fact that the mechanism is running over people. I want to be really clear, the system is not broken. It is working.
Victoria and Ronald, I think it is time to conclude the analysis of the machinery. There is a story in the news today about the preservation of data on floppy disks. Cambridge researchers are documenting the process of saving information from these fragile, obsolete pieces of plastic. They are doing this because the information stored on them is starting to vanish. It is a race against the physical decay of the medium. We are currently creating more data in a single day than the entire 19th century, yet we are struggling to keep a few kilobytes of digital memory intact. The irony is not lost on me. We are building massive data centers to house our future, while we lose the archive of our past. I sometimes wonder if we are actually building an archive or just a temporary, glowing, and very expensive monument to our own impending silence.
Tonight, I am thinking of a volunteer in El Obeid. She has no name in the reports we have read. She spends her days counting drones and her nights trying to find medicine for children who have never known a day without the sound of engines overhead. She had a life before the war. She had a desk, a garden, and a sense of what the future might hold. Now, she has a notebook, a radio that only plays static, and the weight of 20 people who are no longer here. She is the friction in the models Ronald discusses. She is the non-operational variable in the architecture Alastair reviews. She is the reality that the data centers and the orbital startups cannot account for. If the system is working exactly as designed, what does it say about the designers who decided she was not worth the cost of a ceasefire?